July 1944. It's a month since the Allies landed on the beaches of Normandy, opening up a new front. While to the east, the Russians are coming. And bombs fall unopposed on Germany's industrial heartland. The onslaught is relentless. Adolf Hitler is a shell of his former self. But there's always one man at his side, ready to tell the Führer what he wants to hear, or manipulate his way to more power. Martin Bormann. As always, Bormann spends most of his time feeding Hitler's paranoia. No one, he says, can be trusted. For Bormann, the war going badly only brings him closer to the Führer. But others are in crisis. For the last 4 months, Hitler's former golden boy, Albert Speer, has been suffering from mental collapse. The one-time architect is charged with the impossible job of keeping the German army supplied with guns, bombs, and bullets. And Speer knows that while the Allies are destroying his factories, his rivals are plotting to destroy him. Attempting to work from his sickbed, Speer is looking for a way out. Meanwhile, Hitler's second-in-command has all but given up on the war. He was once the man Hitler could rely on to deliver military victories, but a series of disasters means Hermann Göring's reputation is now in tatters. No longer trusted by Hitler, he is now sitting out the war on his private estate, addicted to morphine. But with Hitler visibly crumbling, Göring steels himself. He believes he will be the man who leads Germany when the time comes. Göring's greatest fear, that on the way down, Hitler will drive the country to annihilation, and he will lose everything. Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels is now struggling to make his defiant positive propaganda count. And as the situation deteriorates, he resorts to fueling the paranoia. Head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, has the most to fear from a Jewish backlash. As architect of the final solution, he's growing increasingly nervous and begins to indulge in disloyal thoughts. While Göring may see himself as Hitler's natural successor, Himmler has other ideas. While some of the inner circle's loyalty fractures, outside there's also growing discontent, even within their own army. With wider devotion to the Führer eroding, Hitler knows he must be careful. He has already had 2 attempts on his life. He cannot afford to take any more chances. Hitler's Eastern Front headquarters, the Wolf's Lair, is hidden deep in the forests of East Prussia. Reached only by a single railway. It's a camouflaged fortress, teeming with SS. And it's from this hideout that Hitler now runs the war. Soon, Hitler will be entertaining the Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. But first he holds his daily conference to try to avert the military disaster unfolding around him. But if Hitler feels safe here, he is mistaken. An explosion rips through the compound. A bomb has gone off inside Hitler's conference room. It seems impossible that anyone inside could still be alive. But somehow, Hitler survives. As the smoke clears, the hunt for the traitor is on. They know it must be an inside job. Behind the facade, The party is a rat's nest of envy, greed, and vicious power plays. For the inner circle, no one is above suspicion. Over 600 kilometers west in Berlin, Joseph Goebbels receives the news from the Wolf's Lair. He's eager to demonstrate his loyalty and further his political ambitions. Goebbels targets a weak link in the inner circle, a man only just out of hospital and under increasing pressure. Minister of Armaments, Albert Speer. Speer had been a comparative latecomer to Hitler's circle, but the young designer learned to play up to the Führer's weakness for architecture. He was soon designing the icons of Nazi megalomania. Goebbels had initially greatly admired Speer, but he had become increasingly jealous of the attention lavished on him by his beloved Führer. Hitler had promoted Speer to Minister of Armaments, responsible for equipping the German military. But Goebbels suspects that in the face of impossible demands and increasing desperation, Speer may have a motive for assassination. And with a vast army of migrant slave laborers, Speer also had the perfect means to smuggle a bomb into the Wolf's Lair. As Speer arrives at the propaganda ministry, he is unaware that he's under suspicion. Goebbels intends to question him about his Operation Tote foreign workers. But events soon overtake the interrogation. Troops of the Guard Battalion Großdeutschland in full combat gear surround the building and take up positions to close off the Brandenburg Gate. It is clear that the attempt on Hitler's life is part of a larger conspiracy, a full-scale military coup. Back at the Wolf's Lair, the hunt for the bomber continues. Then Bormann learns that just before the explosion, a colonel with a missing hand had been spotted leaving. It could only mean one man, a veteran war hero, Klaus von Stauffenberg. And he'd been at the meeting where the bomb was placed. That Stauffenberg had placed the bomb is shocking news for the inner circle. It means the German army were behind the plot. This was not like the other attempts on Hitler's life. This time, it came from within. But Hitler lives, and he is bent on revenge. Stauffenberg, believing the Führer to be dead, had raced to Berlin and already launched the army takeover, codenamed Operation Valkyrie. This plot to push the Nazis aside is now in full swing. If it succeeds, the army will be in control of Germany. But there is a fatal flaw in the plot. As the scale of the coup becomes clear, the inner circle is thrown into turmoil. Everyone is a suspect. Heinrich Himmler is tasked by Hitler to fly to Berlin at once and take charge of the situation. Himmler unleashes his Gestapo to investigate any connections the inner circle may have had to Hitler's assassins. His principal suspect is a man known for his contacts within Germany's business and aristocratic circles, Hermann Göring. Unaware that his old enemy Himmler has him in his sights, Göring leaves his mansion and rushes to join Hitler at the Wolf's Lair. Incredibly, despite perforated eardrums, burns, and a cut to his hand, Hitler insists that the planned visit from Mussolini goes ahead. As Göring arrives, Bormann keeps a close eye on him. The unsophisticated and unpopular Bormann has never liked the glamorous former war hero. With suspicion and tension running high, the Tea Party soon descends into a major argument. Admiral Dönitz, blames the army for the failing war effort. Goering agrees, but Dönitz rounds on him and says that the performance of the Luftwaffe is also responsible. Hitler can take no more. He erupts into a raging fury that lasts for an hour and a half. Unwilling to accept responsibility for the disaster he's created, Hitler settles on a scapegoat. His rant ending with a megalomaniac cry, "I'm beginning to doubt whether the German people are worthy of my great ideals." Shortly afterwards, the increasingly camera-shy Hitler is caught on film alongside Bormann and Goering as he bids farewell to Mussolini. This will be the two dictators' last meeting. And as the train pulls out, it's back to business. The bomb plot. In Berlin, Operation Valkyrie is still underway as troops surround Goebbels and Speer at the propaganda ministry. In charge of the replacement army is Major Otto Rehmer. Believing Hitler is dead, Rehmer is unaware that he's acting as part of a coup. But the plotters have left Goebbels with an active telephone. Major Rehmer falls into line, but the coup still hangs in the balance. Himmler issues orders cancelling the mobilization of Operation Valkyrie, but it's not enough. Propaganda Minister Goebbels realizes what has to be done. Knowing Hitler lives will surely pull the rug out from under Valkyrie. Hitler has to break his year-long silence and tell the German people that he is alive. But the broadcast is beset with technical difficulties, and the rumor of Hitler's death is spreading fast. If they don't broadcast soon, Operation Valkyrie may be unstoppable. Finally, just after midnight, they're ready.
Wenn ich heute zu Ihnen spreche, dann geschieht es auf zwei Gründen. Erstens, damit Sie meine Stimme hören. Und wissen, dass ich selbst unverletzt und gesund bin. Damit Sie aber auch das Nähere erfahren über ein Verbrechen, das in der deutschen Geschichte seinesgleichen sucht.
The coup is off. The plotters are quickly rounded up. Stauffenberg and his men are shot. As the echoes of gunshots die down, Bormann fires out the message. Attempted putsch by irresponsible generals bloodily crushed. All ringleaders shot. It's now clear that the assassination was to be the start of a military and political revolt against the regime. And Himmler's intelligence network has also uncovered unsettling evidence that incriminates one of the inner circle. In the conspirators' safe, the SS find a draft list of those who would head a new government should the coup succeed. Albert Speer is back in the frame. In Stauffenberg's diary, Himmler also discovers that Speer had been invited for a meeting with the conspirators on the same day as Hitler's assassination attempt. Things are looking bad for Speer. Himmler immediately issues the orders. There must be no more executions. For a mass purge of any opposition, Himmler needs information, and dead men can't talk. Rumors spread that Albert Speer has been arrested, even executed. But in fact, the Gestapo finds the evidence against Speer is inconclusive. Fortunately, he declined the invitation to the meeting with the conspirators. And the choice of Speer as armaments minister may have been wishful thinking on the part of the plotters. In the aftermath of the plot, thousands are executed. Many hung up like meat carcasses. Some executions are even filmed by order of Hitler to be watched at his convenience. Despite signs that the regime is falling apart, some members of the inner circle still feel they can make capital out of the chaos. Months earlier, Goebbels had given a rousing speech to the people of Germany calling for the entire nation to be mobilized as part of the war effort. Hitler had initially rejected the idea. But now, he finally gives Goebbels his full backing for total war. Goebbels goes about trying to procure 1.2 million men from the civilian sector to be deployed on the front line. Everything will now be unleashed. But Goebbels is not the only member of the inner circle to get an upgrade. As the mastermind of the final solution, so far Himmler's career has consisted of waging war on civilians, but he has always dreamed of military conquest. Himmler had turned 18 in the final days of World War I and had been desperate to prove himself as a soldier, but it was too late. Himmler had harbored dreams of military command ever since. Now, more than 2 decades later, Himmler finally gets his chance. In the wake of the failed coup, the wannabe soldier is appointed commander of an army responsible for defending Germany's industrial heartland. More important still, he has finally usurped Hermann Goering as Hitler's chosen one. But some believe Himmler's dream promotion is a plan to undermine him by the inner circle's most dangerous plotter. Himmler's army is struggling, desperate for supplies and equipment. It's a crisis that immediately throws Himmler into conflict with the man who'd only just escaped his Gestapo death squads, Albert Speer. Having survived the rumors of his involvement in Valkyrie, Speer, as head of armaments, clashes with Himmler over manpower. In the end, it is Himmler who gets Hitler's backing. And it won't be long before Himmler's ability as a military commander is put to the test. At the Wolf's Lair, Hitler is still convinced he can win the war. Since the bomb attack, he's become a drug-addled wreck, with military tactics that are increasingly irrational. Hitler now devises a last-gasp plan to grab victory from impending defeat. He plans to break through in the Ardennes region, splitting the Allied armies in two and pushing on to Antwerp. The Americans will call it the Battle of the Bulge. Back then, the Blitzkrieg had been made possible by overwhelming firepower from the air. But the Ardennes offensive will have no such help. The pressure is on. To pull this off, the Nazis will need 200,000 men and a vast amount of tanks, artillery, and ammunition. Himmler's small part in the operation and first taste of military command ends in disaster. But Hitler takes another punt on his rookie commander. This time his army are to defend Berlin from the advancing Soviets on the Eastern Front. If Bormann did want Himmler finished, then Himmler realizes too late that he's been passed a poisoned chalice. Himmler, the wannabe soldier, fails miserably, and Hitler accuses him of blatant disobedience. With his dreams in tatters, Himmler wants to resign, but he can't face confronting Hitler. Himmler heads 100 kilometers north of Berlin to a sanatorium to be treated for stress and stomach pains. With the German war effort on the verge of collapse and Bormann after him, Himmler decides his only hope of survival is an audacious rebrand. He needs to rid himself of his murderous past. Just a few months earlier, Himmler had ordered concentration camp gas chambers and crematoria to be closed down. His men start destroying evidence, setting fire to accommodation blocks, many with the prisoners still inside. Meanwhile, Martin Bormann accompanies his Führer back to Berlin. They're horrified by the destruction brought upon the city. They'd last seen the Reich Chancellery a month earlier. Now, it's in ruins. Every window shattered. Only the ground floor and cellar are habitable. Hitler's office and residence have now been relocated to the barely completed Führer bunker, deep under the Chancellery garden. Designed by the man Hitler still trusts more than any other, Albert Speer. "18 rooms of bare concrete, his subterranean fortress. Defended at all times by hand-picked SS guards. But the Führer they watch over is a broken man. By now Hitler is a physical wreck, developing a tremor in his left hand after the Valkyrie bombing. Yet the inner circle do nothing, seemingly paralyzed by fear. They know that if they put a foot wrong, they could fall victim to Hitler's silent shadow, Martin Bormann. But while languishing at his sanatorium, Himmler decides to risk everything. He formulates an escape plan, sending a message through his masseur to the Vice President of the Swedish Red Cross. If they agree to waive human rights claims, Himmler will release the only asset he has left. Himmler hopes that by releasing prisoners, he can open up a channel of communication with the Allies. He even hopes that his rebrand as the Nazi who released the Jews might secure him leadership of a post-war Germany. Away from the sanctuary of the sanatorium, any hope he had evaporates as the true horrors of Nazi atrocities are being uncovered. A lone Soviet scout enters part of the vast Auschwitz-Birkenau complex. He walks into a nightmare. A recently abandoned concentration and extermination camp. What's left of the systematic state-sponsored killing of over 6 million Jews. Inside, he finds 600 sick and dying men and women, and mountains of clothes and shoes. Evidence of the most horrific war crimes the world has ever seen. But the net is closing in on the Third Reich. For Armaments Minister Albert Speer, the Soviets' arrival in this region marks the end of all hope. It prepares a memo for Hitler on the hopeless situation for armaments production. Silesia had been providing 60% of Germany's coal supplies. Now there is just 2 weeks' worth of stocks left to fuel factories, railways, and power plants. When he hears the news, Hitler's fragile ego disintegrates, and he turns his anger on the people he professed to love. Speer receives the Nero decree orders from the Führer, Hitler declares the German people have failed in the war, and they don't deserve the infrastructure to survive. It's a step too far for Speer. Speer is summoned to the bunker to hear the Führer's orders firsthand. He can't believe that his friend and mentor, Adolf Hitler, could resort to such inhumanity against his own people. As Speer leaves, he contemplates his own fate and a world without Hitler. He'll later claim that it's now he considers a plan to make that world a reality. Speer had designed the bunker, so he knows it inside out. And he's well aware that a strategically placed gas bomb in one of the air vents could kill everyone inside. But according to Speer's account, he discovers that the air intakes had been moved. Speer's alleged plan is thwarted. It's the 12th anniversary of Goebbels' appointment as Minister of Propaganda. As if to mark the occasion, a giant armada of bombers appears overhead. But they are Allied planes, not German. It's just one of the hundreds of air raids that month, releasing 2,000 tons of bombs on the city of Berlin. And not a single one of Goering's Luftwaffe fighters tries to stop them. And one of those raids wipes out Goebbels' already damaged ministry building. For the inner circle, it's clear. The game is nearly up. Goering throws himself into ensuring his precious artwork, stolen from the greatest museums in Europe, is stored away from the advancing Allies. When the war is over, Goering still hopes to display them in his new home as the future Reich Chancellor of Germany. 300 kilometers south of Berlin, 1,200 concentration camp prisoners are released and loaded onto a train to Switzerland. Himmler's scheme devised in the sanatorium with his masseur is taking place. But if Himmler wants to rebrand himself as the man who saved the Jews, he is going about it the wrong way, demanding payment of 5 million Swiss francs. It's part of his deluded grand plan to position himself as the man who will take over in Germany after a negotiated surrender. Goebbels, on the other hand, is unable to see the purpose of life without his Führer. He works behind the scenes to ensure the German public are towing the party line. Despite the approaching Red Army, he engineers a rare public appearance for Hitler. Martin Bormann also remains fiercely loyal to Hitler. He'd hoped they'd escape to the bunkers he'd built in Obersalzberg. But with Hitler staying put, Bormann knows he too must remain in Berlin. His power relies entirely on proximity to the Führer. A small band of dedicated Nazis now joins Hitler in the underground fortress. Joseph Goebbels is accompanied by his wife Magda and their children. Finally, there is the ever-loyal Eva Braun, Hitler's long-term mistress. But the days of the 1,000-year Reich are numbered. After more than 2 decades of comradeship, conniving, and carnage, those above ground conspire to abandon the Nazis' sinking ship, believing that for those in the bunker, the day of reckoning is coming. Only 2 of Hitler's inner circle will survive the days that follow.